was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear it and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny ST, and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. We're excited that we just completed 3 years of Peace with Penny. On our show, we interview Israeli and Palestinian peace organizations. There are literally hundreds of peace organizations working together at the grassroots level, many for decades. Even during the last 4 months of the Israel-Hamas war, the organizations move forward as best they can. They tell us getting the word out about their work is more important than ever. We're committed to giving a platform to the organizations and people that are working to make their dream of peace a reality. We've had over 100 interviews with incredible organizations and peace activists, and we thank you for your interest. This episode is a bit unique, and we're going to be speaking with Yoav Peck, a peace activist. Yoav lives in Jerusalem. Raised in New York, he's lived in Israel for 50 years. He is an organizational psychologist specializing in systematic programs for the advancement of human dignity. Yoav has been active in human rights and peace work for most of his adult life, holding managerial positions in 3 peace organizations over the past 12 years. He is currently director of capacity building for Challenge, an NGO which is engaged in conflict transformation. Yoav has 4 children and 4 grandkids who all live in Israel. Today, we're going to discuss Yoav's ideas of what the situation currently is, what the obstacles to peace are, and what he thinks needs to happen. Welcome, Yoav.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. How long have you worked on peace in the Middle East?
Well, my first demonstration against occupied territories was in 1978, and that was just 5 years after I immigrated to Israel. But I've been active also in the States before I immigrated in activism against the war in Vietnam and for human rights, civil rights movement.
What made you want to work on peace?
Well, I have a vision of the way the world can be, and it doesn't include violence.
I hear you.
As far as I'm concerned, people get violent when they feel helpless, not when they feel strong. And the causes of violent conflict, if it's on a one-on-one basis or countries against each other, the root of it is people feeling helpless to determine their own reality, to have an impact on their lives. Yeah, so they often turn to violence, and I think peace is the way. Peace is not a cure-all. it's just a way of setting the stage so that we can all figure out how to work together and live together.
Why did you move to Israel 50 years ago? And where were you from?
I grew up in New York, New Jersey area. I was active in, as I say, in the peace movement in the United States. And I came to Israel as a curious activist in the New Left, the American New Left of the late 60s, early 70s. To my amazement, not only did I learn a lot, but I was just bowled over by how much I felt I belonged in Israel and how much at home I felt, and met my relatives, the ones who survived the Holocaust. And it was just a very moving transformation when my first wife and I thought about going back to California, which is where we had been living. We realized that we felt more strongly about staying in Israel than we did about going back to California. So we stayed.
You told me you never really felt comfortable as a Jew living in New Jersey, at least. Why?
Well, if you think about Christmas, every year, my mother, who was an assertive, strong-willed woman, would come into school and insist that, along with the Christmas program and the Christmas carols, that we all sing Rock of Ages, and that there be Hanukkah decorations. And I was proud of her, but I was also embarrassed and made to feel that I was in a minority. The New Jersey suburb where I spent my elementary school years was predominantly non-Jewish, and I always felt like something of an outsider when I came to Israel. And I was welcomed very warmly by everyone I met. I really felt like I belonged. And my great uncle, who at the time was already in his 80s, he clutched my hand and he said, "This is your home. Why are you going back to California?" And at first I couldn't figure out why he thought I would change identities. But with time, I came to feel that Israel is really the place I want to be.
Well, I really can relate to that. And I think a lot of people, if you aren't a minority, I think all minorities feel not quite part of what's going on around them. I really appreciate your insight there. How old were you when you left?
How old was I?
Mm-hmm.
I was 25 when I got to Israel. When we decided to immigrate, we went back to the States and got married and pregnant, and my first child, and made a little money so that we could get set up in Israel. And then we came back just after a month after the end of the Yom Kippur War. And when my son was born, I came out of the hospital, and the first person I met, he said, "Did you have a boy or a girl?" And I said, "A boy." He said, "Oh, another soldier." And I objected, since I hadn't yet diapered my son, but he was already in uniform at that point. And it was just, it was after the trauma of the Yom Kippur War. 2,800 of our soldiers had been killed, and people that represented the way people were thinking at the time.
You said you lived on a commune during the 60s and early 70s. What was that like?
I lived in a commune in Berkeley. We got to Israel in 73. We were both interested in continuing the communal lifestyle, and kibbutz represented that for us.
Can you describe what that was like? I don't think a lot of people know what that would be like.
Well, it was nothing like a California commune. It was an orderly collective village where nobody made a salary. Everyone contributed what they could give to the community and received what they needed in order to live. I didn't have a key to the door of my house because I didn't need one. And we shared everything. Holidays were celebrated with another few hundred people. transportation. I didn't own a car because there was a fleet of cars that you just had to sign your name up, and there would be a car waiting for you. We had very little private property and a lot of communal property, and it felt right, particularly for the first few years.
What were you doing as a job at that point?
I did a variety of things for the kibbutz. I was a cotton farmer, a child care worker. I ran the dining room, serving 3 meals a day to 600 people. Um, I then was
Wow.
ultimately I was allowed to go back to my professional work as a psychotherapist, and I
Mhm.
began splitting my time between the chicken house 4 days a week and 2 days a week doing therapy at the neighborhood family guidance center. So kibbutz members move through a series of jobs depending on what the community needs.
Wow. I know you have a blog called Jerusalem Heart. What types of topics do you write about?
Well, I write on the border, on the seam between the political and the personal. You know, I guess I'm an observer of what's happening here politically, but I'm most interested in the way it affects our lives and our psyches. Um, so I try to share in a personal way my views about the political situation.
You worked with the Soha project for 6 years. How would you describe this project?
Sulha,
Soha.
sulha means in Arabic means reconciliation, but it's a great word because it's been adopted by Israelis, and even when someone's speaking Hebrew, they will say, if they're having a disagreement, they'll say, let's do a sulha. So the word is used in Arabic culture and in Israeli culture. And basically, the organization is there to create venues for Palestinians and Israelis to get together and break down the alienation and stereotypes that exist. And we do that by having people talk with each other less about their opinions about the situation and more about themselves on a personal level, because that's where the bonds between people are formed. People share each time there's a different subject, and if the subject is fear, so Palestinians and Israelis speak with each other about their own fears on a very personal level in small groups. And that's the work of Sulcha. We use prayer and music and particularly small group discussions, which are very respectful and are typified by devoted listening rather than the kind of back and forth arguing, which tends to be the way many Israelis conduct dialogue.
Right. Um, you also work with the Parent Circle Family Forum, which I know a lot about, but can you please explain what that is?
Yeah, the Parent Circle Bereaved Families Forum for Palestinians and Israelis is a group of 700 members who, on both sides, and what's common to everyone is that they have lost a dear one in their immediate family to the conflict. If it's as a soldier, as a resistor of the Israeli army, in any way, if their loved one died as a result of the conflict, they are welcome to become members. And what's moving and inspiring about these people is that despite the terrible loss they've endured, they are all united by their commitment to reconciliation and peace and a just settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And they do a lot of educational work in schools and communities, public campaigns. in order to raise awareness, their message being, we don't want you as a member, because obviously if you're a
Right.
candidate for membership, you've lost someone. And,
Yeah.
we hope to raise awareness of the possibility of reconciliation and peace settlement, so that no more bereaved families are created.
So, Yoav, how would you describe the current situation?
Just a snapshot of the moment we're in. This is the 121st day since October 7th. It's been a much longer war than any we've endured, except for the Independence War. You remember there was a 6-day war, and then the Yom Kippur War was 3 weeks, but this is now dragged on for 4 months. Soldiers are getting killed every day, and thousands of Palestinians have been killed. And all of this might make some kind of sense if we knew where we were going. But we actually have no idea where we're going with this war, because our government refuses to commit itself to a strategy or a future that they can articulate. So the baby Kfir Bibas marked his first birthday somewhere under Gaza, along with 136 hostages in Gaza. And while there are lots of discussions and delegations working on this, so far we still have no agreement about their release. Israel has no plan for the day after the war. Amazingly, your president does have a plan, and he has outlined it, and he's been clear about it. And it's quite a strange situation to have a prime minister who is withholding whatever his plans are, and a foreign president who knows exactly where we need to be going.
Do you think
Sorry.
that has to do with the fact that if the war was over, he probably would be kicked out of office?
Unquestionably. 80% of the population, according to surveys, are disgusted with our prime minister and hold him responsible for what happened on the 7th of October and afterwards. And he's on trial for 3 different counts of corruption. And as long as there's a crisis situation, an emergency situation, as long as we're at war, he feels relatively safe to continue in office. Moving ahead, the IDF, the soldiers are growing weary. We rely on reserve soldiers who are all either students or professionals or working, and they have not been at work for 4 months. And the Hamas has revealed itself to be much more resilient than we thought they were. Just today, there were reports that their police force is actually moving into the parts of Gaza that we have already finished attacking. So they are far from defeated. Meanwhile, in the West Bank of the Jordan, the occupied territories to the east of mainland Israel, times are very hard. Palestinians that I'm connected to, many of them have not worked since Rosh Hashanah, since September. So they are hungry. The families are struggling to survive there. And the violence of settlers and the military has increased sharply since the beginning of the war. The West Bank is possibly going to erupt at the moment. The Palestinians are relatively quiet, but it's going to get worse there. And in the north, I visited my son and my granddaughter on the northern border. My son is in the defense. He's been drafted into reserves, although he's 50, and
Wow, really?
he's he's patrolling his kibbutz
Mm.
as part of the local patrol force there. The government is in shambles. Netanyahu and his defense minister are not speaking. There's terrible communication there, and Netanyahu has no control over his ministers. And finally, the declared wars of the role of the war, the declared goals of the war, which are the collapse of Hamas and the release of the hostages, are nowhere near fulfillment. And many of us feel that the two goals for the war are mutually exclusive, that if we are going to pursue Hamas more and more militantly, they will, more and more of the hostages will die or be killed. And so we're stuck. And overall, you ask Penny for a sense of how we're all feeling. Well, there is really a sense of having no leadership, that there is a major failure and an abandonment of our citizens that led to the 7th of October and ever since. There's a general sadness. I mean, I can tell you, I live down the road from Mount Herzl, which is the Arlington Cemetery of Israel. It's the national cemetery, and also the local cemetery for Jerusalem-born soldiers. And I can hear from my front yard the 3-gun salutes at the funerals, and it's daily. It's every day. More soldiers are buried on Mount Herzl and throughout the country. So
Oh my.
there's a very depressed atmosphere. People go on about their lives, those of us who can, but there's really a very heavy and sad and conflicted sense that people have. Every week there are massive demonstrations demanding that the hostages be released in an agreement with the Hamas, and the government is simply ignoring the huge social pressure that's being brought to bear. So I don't know how long they can continue to deafen themselves to the cries of Israelis. At each of these demonstrations, the families of hostages or bereaved families who lost someone on October 7th, they speak at these demonstrations, and the level of frustration is very high.
Here we're looking at a map of the settlements in the Palestinian villages. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, well, this map, it's in Hebrew, but what's important is the colors. You're looking at the occupied West Bank. This is the territory to the east of Israel and to the west of the Jordan River that were conquered in the 1967 war. And ever since the late 60s, early 70s, successive governments have allowed settlers to move into this territory, although it's continuing to be disputed territory. The world community has not recognized this land as being part of Israel. Palestine has not been recognized as a state, although it does have observer status, Palestine in the UN. But into this occupied territories, breaking all international laws regarding occupied territories, Israeli settlements have been built, and you see the blue dots. Those are the Israeli settlements that have been built since the early 70s. And And the red dots are the existing Palestinian villages and towns. As you see, it's still predominantly populated by Palestinians, but there are today 600,000 Israeli settlers living in the occupied territories. And as you can imagine, any peace settlement that tries to remove those settlers from this land, it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible. So that's a fact that's on the ground.
What do you think the central issues for the Palestinians and Israelis are?
That this is basically what we and the Palestinians believe, that you can't make peace. You know, if you imagine having a dispute with your neighbor, and when he comes out to argue with you, you throw him to the ground and put your boot on his neck, and then you say, let's talk about peace. So talking about peace while you occupy another people by force is out of the question. We have to have a solution to the occupation, and there are creative solutions going around. Lots of thinking has been done about it. But at this point, Israel has the upper hand. There are not equal rights for Palestinians who live in the territories. And we are going to have to resolve this issue as part of any peace negotiation for the long run.
So, what do you think the central issues for conflict resolution are?
Yeah, so we are going to have to come to agreements about where the final borders of Palestine and Israel will be. We're going to have to address the issue of millions of Palestinians who are the relations of people who fled the country starting in 1948. Jerusalem is a divided city. There's East Jerusalem with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living there, and West Jerusalem, where I live. And Jerusalem is extremely sensitive. It's the center of three great religions, and there has to be a resolution of how Jerusalem is going to be administered. Security for everyone. You know, when you talk about security, very often people think you're talking about the Israelis' security. Everyone needs to feel secure. And then again, we need to address what will become of the settlements where thousands of Israelis are living. So these are the central issues that will have to be on the table. There were, you know, and none of them are simple issues, but every conflict in history has been resolved through negotiation, and that we are no special example. We also will end up at the negotiation table. The question is, how many more people have to die before we get there?
So, what's your proposal here? What do you think should happen?
Well, it's not easy, but it's simple. Nobody makes peace and nobody negotiates while someone is shooting at them. So we have to have an immediate ceasefire leading to an end to the armed hostilities. Israel must leave Gaza back to our border, and that will require the establishment of a different authority. At the moment, we are there fighting the Hamas. They are the recognized authority of the Palestinians in Gaza, whether we like it or not. And the Israelis have overwhelmingly are controlling what happens in Gaza and will have to withdraw. All of the hostages must be released, and the price that we will have to pay, nearly everyone agrees that the Hamas will insist on releasing thousands of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails in return for the hostages. When we released Gilad Shalit, one lone kidnapped soldier some years ago, we were forced to release 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, and now we have 136 kidnapped hostages, and the price we'll have to pay is to release many, many thousands of Palestinian prisoners. And nobody is excited or happy about the idea that prisoners with blood on their hands will be free. And on the other hand, it seems that that's going to be the only way. And, nothing prevents us, if we have an interim settlement, an interim agreement that releases the hostages, there's nothing preventing us, if, God forbid, the Hamas should decide to attack Israel again, Israel can go back into Gaza. But for the time being, the hostages are not well. They're living now for 4 months in those tunnels under Gaza, and public opinion in Israel is overwhelmingly demanding that that something be worked out between the two sides so that the hostages can come home.
Do you know many other peace activists?
Yeah, of course. We're a sizable community of peace organizations. As you mentioned at the beginning, there are over 100 peace organizations on both sides, Palestinian and Israeli. There's an umbrella organization called the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which brings us all together and provides various services. So yeah, we're a community of peace activists.
Yeah, there's even more than the ones that belong to ALMAP, but most of the folks that I interview are members. Do you hear that they feel they can continue their work now? I know many are, but what do you hear?
Yeah, everyone is continuing to be as committed as we were before. Everyone experienced a terrible shock on October 7th. Many peace activists like myself have served or do serve in the army doing reserve duty. So we are soldiers, and we're also soldiers for peace, which is the contradiction that we live with, we embrace. We have to protect ourselves, but we have to continue working for peace. And I'd say people were shattered. People were really shocked by the brutality of the Hamas attack. And it did shake some people who are active in Israeli-Palestinian relations. But my Palestinian friends condemned the Hamas attack, and the peace community is resilient. We've been fighting against the occupation of Palestine for a long time, and we'll continue until we can go to the movies in the evening instead of demonstrating outside the Prime Minister's residence.
What do you think about Israel's approach to eliminating Hamas? Do you think it was the correct way to go about it?
No, we can't eliminate Hamas. The people who invaded Israel on October 7th were 9 and 10 and 11-year-old boys in 2014, which was the last major Israeli incursion into Gaza. And we educated them. We recruited them. More violence, what's the word? Can't speak English anymore. Breeds. Violence breeds violence. Thank you. And, the harder we fight the Hamas, the more inspired the Hamas fighters will be. And Hamas is an idea. It's not just an organization. And even if we kill the leadership of Hamas, there will be new leaders to replace them. So it's simply clear that no degree of military success will ever bring a quiet that we all long for to our country.
What do you think about how Israel is being portrayed internationally?
Well, frankly, I focus on Israel, but I do take a look at the New York Times from time to time, and also at Al Jazeera, which is an Arab-owned news venue. Um, we are earning enemies. Israel is, in the initial weeks of the war, when we responded to the terrible events of October 7th, I think most people in the world understood that we had to respond. But it's now been 4 months, and we're in a different stage, and it grinds on and on. And every time we discover one tunnel underground, we also discover three more that we didn't know about. And there's a whole city of underground tunnels in Gaza. A military victory is going to elude us. And all of the bravado that you hear is just talk.
Yeah.
But internationally, I'm very concerned about the fact that people are confusing anti-Semitism with anti-Israel. I mean, you can be opposed to the policies of Israel, and that doesn't mean that you hate Jewish people. What I
Well,
see,
perhaps in your mind that's true, but unfortunately, they have been conflated.
yeah, they've been conflated, and people are not doing very clear thinking about it.
It's
The
really important for everyone, really, in Israel. I know how when it's been attacked and so disgustingly, and I mean, you can't uh, even talking about what happened on October 7th is so horrific to discuss, but the international opinion, you cannot have the daily views of parents holding their dead children's bodies and crying without people believing Israel is beyond wrong, but maybe even a monster. And I think most people here believe that Israel's never going to get their reputation back, and it's important. This little strip of land, I don't care how brave and what the intentions are, but the whole world is turning against Israel, and it didn't have to be, in my opinion. Do you think genocide is a fair charge?
no, genocide is the planned, intentional decimation of a people based on their race or who they are. The Holocaust was genocide because
Mhm,
everything I just said defines what the Nazis did.
mhm.
But I do believe we're committing war crimes
Yeah,
as opposed to genocide, and that the indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians in Gaza is just unspeakably wrong. And I am not the prime minister.
mhm.
It's
Yeah,
uh, it's quite horrifying. 25,000 dead Gaza residents, and some 10,000 of them children. I mean, it's quite overwhelmingly terrible.
yeah. And
So
and the world isn't the world doesn't have to think the way we do. The world is just looking at the numbers. When just by the numbers, regardless of what the intention was, and the fact that people say it is intentional, that Israel is trying to kill all the Palestinians. But the truth is, in numbers, if they just look at the numbers, it is easy to convince people without looking further that it is genocide, and it's just horrific. Do you think Israel will ever get over the damage that's been done to them as how they've been perceived internationally?
Well, I think it's possible. It depends how we handle ourselves from today onward. If Israel becomes a force for a peace agreement, which I think will require a change of government here before that's possible, um, I think we have every interest in helping the Gazans rebuild their country, rebuild their homes, and and that's possible. I think in retrospect, people will understand our initial response to October 7th. I don't think we will ever or should ever be forgiven for the massive killing of thousands of innocent people, but it depends how we behave.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with restorative justice, so even the most criminal murderers have found their way back into civilized society by doing retribution and taking responsibility for what they've done. So, I mean, I think that's possible. It's a scenario that I would like to believe in, because you know, when we go on vacation abroad, people are usually warm towards us as Israelis, and I think that's changed. And
Yes. Oh, the college campuses particularly are horrific.
yeah,
And that is also part of a plan that's been going on a long time. I've been writing about it a long time about the activities on college campuses where the Jewish kids now they work all their young lives trying to get the best grades, trying to be able to get the opportunity to go to college. And now I understand if I was an Israeli parent and I was sending my kid off to war or just the army, even, that I would have to be scared. But as a Jewish parent, sending my kid off to college and I have to be worried that they'll be attacked on campus, that's unconscionable. And the if you've seen when the presidents of the colleges are called in, when they're asked directly, is it against your policy to call for genocide of Jews on your campus? And they say, well, we have to see the context. Are you kidding me? But that's what it's like here today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a rough situation. It's upsetting to me, but as I say, I stay focused on what's in front of me, and there's so much to be done in Israel that that's where I'm focused. But yeah, it's done us huge international damage. Uh, our relationship with our strongest ally is really in jeopardy. Um, we have a minister of the police who openly attacked President Biden in the news in the last 24 hours. And I don't know how he does that when, if he looked at all of his police's equipment, he would see on many of the armaments made in America.
Right.
So it's quite strange. I just want to say, Penny, that I am not grim. I think there are enough positive forces awake in Israel that it may take us some more time, but we are going to set things right. during the protests against the judicial reform before the war, hundreds of thousands of Israelis who had never demonstrated for anything were in the streets calling for the government to rescue our democracy. And many of those same people are in the streets calling for the release of the hostages. An entire swath of the Israeli people are engaged in social activism. And I think sooner or later, they will turn their attention to the root causes of our distress and the root causes of this war, and that we will prevail. We will end up with a government whose members are getting up in the morning to serve the people and not to serve themselves, and that we will make headway towards a peaceful resolution of all of this. So I'm an optimist, and I believe we have it in our power to turn things around.
Amen. Well, I want to thank you for your time today and for helping
Penny,
educate us.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here and with your audience, and I see myself as a resource to the extent that you or any of your people would like to get more information. I usually respond to emails, so that would be fine.
Very cool. Thanks so much, Yoav. For those interested, Yoav's email is Yoav, which is Yoav as in Victor, Peck, Peck, all together, at netvision.net.il. That's Yoav Peck at netvision.net.il. I love speaking with peace activists who, even during the Israel-Hamas war, realize that peace is the only sane solution. As you know, there have been a number of opportunities this year that I'm trying to blend into an already over full schedule. Last I heard, no one is adding more hours to a day, and it's a good thing because I would probably take them up on it. The way I'm dealing with this is, for now, I will be alternating weeks between Peace with Penny interviews and Peace with Penny Times of Israel blogs, which also will include a related podcast interview post. My next Times of Israel blog I'll have posted next Tuesday on February 27th. It will be about one of my favorite peace organizations, Path of Hope and Peace. You'll read and hear about how Phil Saunders, a Jewish Israeli, and Ziad Sabatin, his Palestinian peace partner, have changed the previously violent, terrorist-ridden town of Husan in the West Bank to a peaceful partnership with Sur Hadassah, a secular and religious town on the Israeli side of the Green Line, and Beitar Illit, an ultra-religious town in the West Bank, or what the settlers would refer to as Judea and Samaria. What they've accomplished over these years is a triumph that is being studied by academics and has begun to be imitated in other locations. Even during this ugly Israel-Hamas war, we spoke with them just after the horrific October 7th tragedy and have received a few updates since, as recently as yesterday, and have been told that thankfully, through their efforts, the impact of economic interdependence has helped to hold the peace steady. Please join us to learn about this peaceful haven. How I will combine these opportunities are fluid decisions, which I'm reminded of as I listen to the rain landing outside my window. Another day of rain in sunny California. Us Southern Californians are flummoxed by all this rain we've experienced since last year, which we've been told are long atmospheric rivers in the sky, courtesy of the water vapor in the tropics, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's been a strange experience and depends exactly where you are. If you're in a car traveling, it could be a stormy part of the drive, and next it's sunny. Personally, I prefer visiting St. John again or going to Australia for the first time. Thanks to global warming, we're expected to see a massive change in water distribution, which can be interpreted as this is something we need to get used to. As for me, I need to learn the word no and how much. I love what I do and feel even more urgent about working on peace as we see the horrors of the war on our electronic devices, which is not conducive to saying no. But when you already work long hours, 7 days a week, that's why I'm trying to figure out how to do everything. What's even crazier is that although there is a personal feeling of satisfaction for what I do, that doesn't pay the bills. My personal knippel, a Yiddish word that means a woman's secret stash of money, is gone. Mine was not secret, but it was my savings from my corporate days before I got married at the ripe age of 41, which I was free to spend any way I wanted, and I did. Where did the money go? I spent it on writing my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel, and on producing Peace with Penny, both projects that I felt I had to do to get the word out that Israelis and Palestinians do want peace. And now I need to find sponsors and mentors to kick Peace with Penny up to the next level. I get mad at myself that I don't know more about marketing to get the word out about these terrific peace organizations that I speak with. If I had some financial backing, there would be so much more I could do. I'd love to collaborate with a like minded NGO. Or do you belong to an organization or hold a conference that would love to hear a speaker with positive news about pockets of peace that exist even today? Do you know anyone who would want to help? Email me at penny, the letter S like Schwartz, TEE.com. I hope you will join us on Peace with Penny as we explore the intelligent, creative, heartfelt work of these organizations. The bottom line is, it will give you hope that there can be peace someday between Israelis and Palestinians. Amen. Our hearts go out to all the people suffering in the wars, and for whatever reason, hopefully tomorrow will be a better day. Join us on our journey, and may you live in peace, shalom, and salam.